Let's create a landscape bed edge. The first thing you're going to want to do is determine where that edge is going to be. I like to use spray paint as a guide, but you can also use your shovel or just the old landscape bed edge. Once you've got your edge line determined, take your shovel and just work along that, cutting out the edge. I prefer to use a spade shovel with a square tip, but really whatever shovel you have will work as long as the soil is nice and soft. One thing to remember is you're going to want to keep the piles together, the soil. If you're going to take the soil out of the landscape bed or move it around or reuse it, it's much easier to manage if you keep it in piles. Another thing to note, if you watch, I'm using my foot as a fulcrum there. It's a lot easier on your back if you have steel-toe boots, if you can, once you stick the shovel in the ground there, use your shoe to just pop the soil right up. Makes it way easier. You can work a lot longer. Once you've got your edge made, now it's time to clean up the soil so that you can get ready for mulching. If you put everything into a pile, it's going to be much easier. If you didn't make piles, take a rake and create piles so that we can load it into a wheelbarrow or a trash can. One good tip, if you're going to reuse this soil like I plan to, is to take a shovel and chop it up, make it nice and fine for reuse. I plan on using this to reseed areas, so the finer I can make the soil, the better. Sometimes when you're cutting an edge, you end up having to take big chunks out, so cutting it up is going to make it much better for future use. If you cut a new edge like I did here, sometimes there's a lot of grass that you didn't dig out. To save time from digging it out, I just come back with a weed eater and mow it down really low, so once I've mulched over you can't see it. And when it comes back, I'll just hit it with herbicide. Like I mentioned earlier, I plan to reuse this soil, so I'm going to collect it in my wheelbarrow. If you're not, and you chopped it up nice and fine, you can just spread it out and usually mulch over it, and it'll be fine. Once you've collected all your soil and taken care of all the weeds and cleaned up everything, the last step before mulching is going to be cleaning up that edge. Like I said earlier, no need to be a perfectionist because you're going to come back now and just really clean it up. Once you've cleaned up the edge, you may also want to come to the inside of the landscape bed and clean some of that soil out there. The key is to get a nice transition from the landscape to the edge for the mulch so that you can see the definition of the edge. Now it's time to add the mulch. I'm only going to keep the depth about 1 to 2 inches because it's really hardwood mulch that I'm using and it doesn't break down very fast. Rule of thumb is usually 2 to 4 inches as far as depth of the mulch goes. If you're using a leaf or composty mulch, you can go up to 4 inches because it'll break down. But the woodier it gets, the less it's going to break down. So you want to keep it really thin. Another very important thing to remember is when pulling the mulch up to a tree or a plant, you don't want to keep it 4 inches and mound it up on the root flare. You want to transition down to about 1 inch so that you're not covering up any of that plant. The same goes for the edge of the bed. You just spent all that time cutting a nice edge, so when you're transitioning the mulch up to the edge, just keep it to about 1 inch so you can see the definition. And that's edging and mulching a bed.